This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and is presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pie Pizza and powered by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. I am your host, Anthony. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2_ ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at pro_ant. No underscores in that. They don't allow characters over there in the handles on Blue Sky. So just pro_ant, PROANT over there on Blue Sky. In tonight's episode of Disguise Coverage, apologies if I don't sound the best. I'm a little sick. I feel fine, but I don't sound good. I sound worse than I feel, which I'll take because I'd rather have it be that way than sound great and feel terrible. So apologies for how I sound in this episode. Hopefully, you won't have to hear me too much as I am joined by my guest shortly, Mr. JP Acosta from SB Nation, to dive into this Bills-Rams matchup in this game. I see a lot of you folks popping into the chat already. We'll get the conversation started very shortly with JP. And this will be a fun one I really think for football fans in general, but, from a just pure football perspective, the Rams do a lot of fun stuff, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think regardless of how closely you follow other teams or at the NFL across the entire league, if you're more just centrally or locally focused on the Bills, I would imagine in some form or fashion, Sean McVay and the type of offense that he runs and what he does has kind of made his way into your ears and your purview. And what they do on offense, they do some really great stuff. They have some really fun dudes on the defensive side of the ball, also do some good things schematically on that side of the ball as well. But this will be a fun one to kind of knock out between the Bills and the Rams. And to have that conversation, I am joined by one of my favorite guests who I told myself to look this up beforehand and I forgot to. I think of all guests ever, I think he has now been on the show the most and has the most guest appearances ever. So we might have to make a jersey and hang it in the rafters. I'll add it behind me in some way, shape, or form. Joining us now on the show, Mr. JP Acosta of SB Nation. JP, you are one of my favorite guests. You are tremendous. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. And it feels like an honor to be the most had-on guest. I think that's amazing. I always love talking ball with you, man. It is truly one of my favorite things to do out of the week. And I enjoy every single time we just get to chop it up because we're going to go a little long.
Yeah, I enjoy the hell out of it. Just your perspective on things, the way you see the game, how much the rapport and the chemistry that we have. Yeah, it's a really good time, an enjoyable time. And it's just you being a resource is always great to me. I think I've told you this before. I think I've said it on air, but I've also told you off air. Whenever I don't have a specific team person in mind, I'm always I'm just going to message JP. And I had this one earmarked for a little bit just because, I was mentioning a little bit in the intro as you joined here. The Rams, this. I think so many people do. McVay has reached this conversation piece for even the most casual of fans in terms of being this schematic. I'll say genius because I think people kind of put him in that tier or echelon. And what he's able to get out of his team, what he does schematically, creatively, in a variety of forms and fashions, the run game starting to match some of that creativity and schematic flair that the pass game has, obviously getting a Super Bowl underneath his belt, appearing in 2. I think this is a really fun game, even if you're not a Bills fan or if you're not a Rams fan. I think this is just a fun game schematically because of who these teams are. And from a Bills fan perspective, really, this is the team they don't see a ton. The Bills don't play the Rams a ton. But I think it really is such an enjoyable week because a lot of what the Rams do, even some of the stuff they do defensively, but they're so fun on the offensive side of the ball with what they get into, how they operate. And then they have some really good dudes on top of it, all across the offense. They're a really fun group to study and watch and talk about.
So if you think about the last time I believe the Bills and the Rams played in the regular season, I believe that was after the Rams won the Super Bowl.
Yep, opening night of that season.
Bring it back to, if you compare these teams from where they were at that point to where they are now, it feels like it's two completely different teams. both in how they attack you and the personnel. I think you hit it right on the head when it comes to Sean McVay. This Rams team stresses you in so many different ways. It stresses your rules. It stresses your communication with how much motion they use, how often. I wrote about this last year, and I still think it's super cool what they're doing with motion. They don't use motion to try and hit you downfield like the Dolphins do. They don't try and use motion to hit you horizontally like the Niners at their best do. What the Rams use motion for is for leverage. They use it for angles. They are I hate to say this because Sean McVay probably was this kid in gym. He was the kid who always had the good pump fake. He always knew the angles. He always knew he might not have been the best athlete, but he's going to beat you to the spot every time because he knew what angle to take. And that's kind of what the Rams do. They beat you to every angle, and they stress everything on the offensive side of the ball. And it combines with, having Stafford, Puka, and Cooper Kupp at the same time, and Kyron Williams. They just have so many dynamic players that you have to watch out for, combined with all that stress of motion and using different formations to do the same thing. It just stresses you the hell out.
And that's even with I'm happy that, and I'm saying this with a grain of salt, and I also don't want it to be a jinx because it seems like Puka goes down like every single week, and you're like, oh no, is he really hurt? And then he comes back like in the next series or the next play, and you're like, oh, okay, he's fine. But even when they're not healthy, and it's like a rotating cast of, support players for Stafford or the offensive line, and we've even seen some of that this year, like no Puka, no Kupp. The offensive line is hurt. They're playing musical chairs again. Obviously not as bad as last year, which was just really the last couple of years. Their offensive line has just been like cursed and a walking wounded mass unit. But even when he's just like plugging in random guys that you've never heard of, he's still able to just create leverage and create angles and create advantage. And then even more so once you drop in Puka and you drop in Kupp and Kyron and a healthy offensive line. It's so fun. And I love that point because there's so many, they're so creative with their motion and how they attack. And it'll be like, oh, no, we're just doing it to run like a 5-yard hitch. Or we're just going to do it to like run this screen. And then, okay, here comes the sail route, or here comes this like deep out and we'll gash you for like 12 or 13. But it really is just like, you don't know what's coming. And because you don't know what's coming, and we're going to get into this obviously as we go forward, because you don't know what's coming, because they can limit their tells by formation and personnel, but how they dress it all up and how they present it, you have to account for so much. And again, it's not just, I feel like that's almost more frustrating as a defense because it's not like, here comes the shot play. It's like, no, we're just going to keep like cutting you like little by little. Sometimes it might be like a deep cut by like your bicep, or like we might get close to your neck a little bit, but it's not death by like 1,000 paper cuts. It's more like, it's not quite like from a katana but it's not quite as shallow as a paper cut. Like I need some weapon in between. And then it can vary. It can get a little deeper. It can get a little shallower. They can do it in the run. They can do it in the pass. They're able to mitigate and withstand injuries at times. And yeah, they're just such a fun group to see. And I feel like this conversation continues to happen year after year. And what I appreciate about McVay, especially, and I don't want to kind of like stab at the low-hanging fruit here, but especially in comparison with, because I feel like it's always him and Shanahan. And I think, Ben Johnson now too. I think those are the three offensive minds when people talk about like the Shanahan McVay coming from a similar tree, but it's Shanahan, McVay, and I feel like, Ben Johnson. And then obviously Doug Peterson, your boy, amazing offensive mind. I'm sorry. That's me. I take it back. But especially and I mentioned the low-hanging fruit piece because the Niners are struggling this year, but they've also had a ton of injuries, which muddies it. But I feel like McVay reinvents himself more year over year with how they add and how they change. And, he started to move towards get more gap scheme runs before Shanahan was, and he was starting to work in duo. And then it wasn't just like, no, we're not just going to work in duo. I'm going to figure out a way to like motion my tight end into it and like use him to insert like those creative little wrinkles. He's consistently reinventing himself or tweaking things season after season. And he's that one that I feel like you're studying things in week 2 and 3 and 4. Other teams are incorporating it in week 9 and 10, 11 and 12.
I think one of the biggest hires and one of the biggest additions to the Rams staff has been the addition of Mike LaFleur. in the offensive game planning room.
Good call.
Because before Mike LaFleur came in, it was a lot of outside zone, wide zone, the things we associate with Sean McVay and that offense. Even when they won the Super Bowl, their run game was built predominantly on outside zone. But when Mike LaFleur came in from the Jets, he ran a little bit more counter, more power, more gap scheme things. And that just consistently added, it morphed this offense from being so, they had too many tells. You know, they had too many ways to get beaten. You know, I think of I believe it was 2018 when they lost to I think they lost to Fangio's Bears. And then,
that was the one that put like the blueprint out of how to stop them, and the Patriots basically replicated
and then the Patriots replicated in the Super Bowl, and the onus kind of went out on how to stop this Rams run game. Yeah. But it took getting other minds into the room. And that's one thing I think Sean McVay doesn't get a lot of credit for. It's the constant always adding other minds, other ideas, the constant evolution, because you can't evolve with the same guys telling you the same thing every single year or every single week. You have to go out and bring in a guy like Mike LaFleur, who got fired from the Jets, and he'll help you get into more gap scheme. You have to be willing to make drastic changes in order to stay on the cutting edge. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've appreciated about Sean McVay.
That's a really great point. Like, good call with LaFleur. And yeah, I think that also kind of goes, hand in hand with my point. And that's just so great in general, not even just for like football, but I feel like philosophically for life. Like, you don't grow, you don't progress, you don't learn anything new if you surround yourself with the same people consistently, or even with people who think the same way you think, or see the things the same way that you think, or see things the same way that you see them. You're not going to challenge yourself. You're not going to be open up to new ideas or new lines of thinking. And yeah, that it was forever, the McVays and the Shanahans, that whole tree, it was like, outside zone, wide zone, play action boots off of it, rinse and repeat. And that's what we're going to do. And then, yeah, I think it was 2 seasons ago or last season. I think last season I noticed it more early on. Rams were like, no, we're just duo. Here comes Tyler Higbee to insert duo. I think because they opened up against Seattle, I think, if I remember correctly. And I just remember them going duo in the low red zone, like over and over. And I was like, oh, like this is fun. Yeah, just really cool wrinkles that they get into and how they constantly evolve and stay on top of things. And I think he looks for that defensively as well, and like his coordinators and who he appoints and how he tries to operate. Really good football mind, really smart dude. Well-run organization who continues to find ways to be relevant. And man, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go forward, with some of the young talent they've started to bring through on the defensive side of the ball, if those dudes can hit as the offensive guys get healthy, like, there's just something about them. Like, I just do not care about, like, if the Rams get into the playoffs and they're 9-8, or actually I'll say 9-8 or 8-9 or some ugly record. Like, I just don't care. I just will forever believe in the Rams, especially with who they have now. But yeah, McVay and that squad and what they're able to do makes for a fun conversation. And that is the crux and the focus of this episode. For those of you playing at home who don't know how we do here on the show, myself and JP are each going to give our top 3 critical elements, matchup pieces, however you want to label it, that we think will decide the Bills versus Rams this weekend. Could be anything as wide scale or as detailed and niche as we want. Scheme, structure, player versus player, coaches, position groups, an entire side of the ball. Anything and everything is up for grabs and able to be discussed. For those of you watching us live, feel free to put your answers into the chat. We will bring them up as much as possible. For those of you also playing at home, if you hate or love our answers, feel free to jump into the chat and let us know that as well. JP, you are the guest. The floor is yours. Feel free to start with whichever one, or if you have an order, you know the drill, you know the rules. Godspeed.
As much as I talked about the Rams offense and the evolution and the changing, I'm going to start on their defensive side of the ball first.
Okay.
And I'm going to circle specifically 2 players. Okay. The Rams, Jared Verse and Braden Fiske.
Okay.
You gotta keep tabs on those 2 guys. I think specifically Jared Verse. Jared Verse was my edge one going into the NFL draft. I thought he was such a force of power and burst. And we talk about explosiveness a lot when it comes to pass rushes. We think about speed and dip and bend when it comes to explosiveness. Jared Verse has explosiveness, but it's not around the corner. It is running straight through your chin strap. It is going to hit you as hard as possible and go straight through you with a bull rush. His speed to power is already one of the best in the NFL, and he consistently can get to it and get counters off of it. So far this season, Jared Verse is 10th in the NFL in pass rush win rate. At ESPN has him at 20% pass rush win rate, which is good. It's a top 10 in the NFL.
Yeah.
Consider he is also double teamed 24% of the time. So for comparison, and this is not to knock this other guy because I know how his fans and the fans can be. TJ Watt has
I was going to say, I knew where this was going. I knew where this was going.
TJ Watt has a 19% pass rush win rate, and he is double teamed 13% of the time.
Ooh.
Like, he is dominant at this stage of his career as a rookie. And there's a specific play he has against the Saints where he gets it's like when you see Myles Garrett doing the crossover thing, but Jared Verse is coming from depth because he's faking like he's out on number 2, but he's running and gets full speed on this blitz, and he lifts the left guard for the Saints off of his feet. And like, you're sitting there watching, and you're just like, what are you supposed to do with this?
Yeah, like what he did to Mailata a couple weeks ago against Philly. Yeah, like he kind of shrank down from the slot and just poof.
He lifted Jordan Mailata off his feet. And for those who don't know, Jordan Mailata is a massive individual.
A big man.
It's a big dude, and he casually just lifts him off of his feet. I think my comparison just playing style for Verse coming out was Brian Arakpo, and just the power and the force that he generates is massive. But where I think the Bills can get after this team, especially up front, is in the run game. So the Rams have done this really weird thing where they have built this entire defensive line out of edge defenders and 3 techniques. They only have one player in their 2-deep depth chart that is over 310 pounds, and that is Bobby Brown. That is the nose tackle. Kobe Turner's 290. I think Neville Gallimore is like 300. I think Tyler Davis, who's a backup, is 300. Jared Verse is 260. Myron Young's 250. Michael Hoyt's 270. Braden Fiske, 280.
Yeah, like, little guy.
Very cool players to have on 3rd and long. The problem is you have to defend 1st and 2nd down to get to 3rd and long. And where they can be beat is getting after them early and wearing them down. They don't really have the best linebackers right now. Omar Spates is doing his best, but you can wear them down in coverage. I think specifically the way that I say that the Bills can get after this Rams defense is you throw it at a base and you run it out of your lighter personnel because there are less bodies up front when they get into nickel, and that means smaller players are going to be on the field. So you have to consistently add or do something because those guys are just going to get pushed off the line. But in base, what the Rams' problem always has been is it's the same problem every 3-4 base team is going to end up seeing. If you want to play quarters, or if you want to play cover 2, you want to play these 2 high shells, one of those edge defenders is going to have to drop into coverage.
And Byron Young's not too bad.
Ends up being Michael Hoyt, who, if we remember last year's playoff game against the Lions, I think he gave up like 12 catches for almost 100 yards.
Yeah, it was rough.
It's rough because like he used to be a defensive tackle. They asked him to like cut weight to play edge because they didn't have bodies.
And drop into zone, cover the curl flats and the hook.
In the zone coverage. It is the polar bear in Arlington, Texas meme. What are you doing out there?
Nice.
Like, what are you doing out there? You don't belong out there. So I think the Bills, what they can do is they can have a lot of success, kind of like the 49ers game, where you just blast them.
Yeah.
You just got to hit them. And I think that game against the Niners gave them a lot of confidence because all they did was spam duo. And it made sense against a Niners team that doesn't have a true nose tackle. Well, you're facing a team that also doesn't have a true nose tackle. So I think in order to alleviate some of the pressure on the tackles in the passing game, because Verse is going to get his. He's going to get one because that's how good of a player he is. And I think Fiske is going to get his. But you want to wear them down. You want to force them to defend the run in order to get to the pass. And that way you kind of slow them down, you wear them down game over game. And you got to try and attack this. They're small up front. So you got to try and attack them.
I have a very similar point for my first one. I titled it, the Rams pass rush versus the Bills pass protection, and then gave it a sub bullet of like, don't let yourself get into known passing downs and distances and situations against them for a variety of reasons. I want to start with the run game piece, which you mentioned, just because I track this. I mean, I chart everything anyway, but against them, and I tweeted this yesterday, and I pulled it up to make sure I could remember it exactly. So against the Niners, the Bills had a stretch from the end of quarter one to the end of quarter two because there was not a lot of plays in this game, especially the first half, it flew by. So from the end of the first quarter to the end of the second quarter, the Bills ran duo on 7 of 10 plays.
That's right.
And the 3 plays that they didn't were 2 passes, and one of the 3 passes was actually duo with a pass tag. And Allen threw the pass tag to Amari Cooper. So they spammed the hell out of it, to your point, which is Joe Brady's thing. It's the Cowboys game from, last year where they were running dart and all the tackle pull stuff. Until you prove you can stop it, the Bills are going to keep running it. What that run concept has been for them this year, it's been weak side mid zone. That is usually their bread and butter. But I love that they pivoted to duo in this game because it's kind of weatherproof, I guess, because it's just downhill. Let's get our footing. Let's get behind our pads. And to your point, it also worked against the Niners defense with just how they've been impacted by injuries. They don't really have teeth on that side of the ball, especially on the interior. Get downhill, mash them. I am in complete lockstep with you for this game against the Rams. I'm not even going to drill too much on it. You hit on everything. They're a super fun front. They're athletic. They're fast. They're quick. They're mean, but they're smaller. Lean on them, grind them into the dust. It might work right off rip in the first and second quarter, or it might start to pay off in the third quarter or into the fourth. If you get on them and you lean on them, especially with how the Bills are built, Osiris Torrance is big and mean and a mauler. Spencer Brown is big and mean, similar for Dawkins. Edwards is physical. McGovern with his arm length and a bit of physicality. You can create displacement against this Rams front. Do it vertically. Don't because even sometimes for as not great as they are at linebacker, Roseboom will make some nice plays on zone where he sees it and he shoots and I'm like, oh, not so much if you're getting downhill and you can create that displacement, drive those defensive tackles back into the second level and get after them. So 1000% with you there. And then I just wanted to talk about the Rams pass rush a little bit because it's super good. So the Rams overall, they're first in pressure rate at 39.8. They're also first in pressure rate on third down. Their third down pressure rate is 55%. That's wild high. That's almost 5 full percentage points higher than team in second place. But what's funny with that, for as good as they are at pressure rate, they're middling in sack percentage, 16th in sack percentage. So that pressure rate hasn't always translated to sacks. Some more numbers for Jared Verse. Amongst these are per PFF. Amongst 228 qualifying defensive linemen, so defensive tackles, edges, 228. This is a wide net. He's 4th in pressures. Good volume stat, right? 4th in pressures, awesome. But what about the efficiency pieces? He's 6th in pass rush productivity, which measures your pressures relative to how much you rush the quarterback. He's tied for 9th in their win rate. He's 4th in hurries, and he's tied for 2nd in QB hits. And then some other dudes there. Kobe Turner is tied for 9th in hurries. Braden Fiske is tied for 25th. And a lot of that, Fiske started out slow over the last, maybe 5-6 weeks, maybe 7. He's come on.
He's got a nice counter move where he'll stutter and then club and swim back to the inside. He's got stumpy arms, but he'll do that little stutter club move back to the inside and it just dust guards.
Yes, and he needs to do that because with how being undersized, he's got to play with motor and agility and quickness because he's not big and imposing. And he's the Roger McCreary of defensive tackles. He's got these short, tiny little T-Rex arms, but he's tied for 25th in hurries. Byron Young tied for 17th in pass rush productivity. You've got multiple dudes up front. I loved Kobe Turner coming out of Wake Forest. He was one of like my favorite guys studying a couple years ago. And so I'm happy to see him succeed. Not the best athlete, not this high ceiling guy, but he grinds and he'll win quickly or suddenly at times. They have a really good like overall group highlighted, I think, by those four: Young, Turner, Fiske, and Verse, obviously, with Verse being the centerpiece like you talked about. And what I also like with seeing Verse is what he does as a pass rusher, obviously, and the speed to power and the juice and the get off and all that. But he also uses that to his advantage when defending the run. And he'll take that step off the line and then pop back in with a quick swim, or he'll shoot off the line one way and shoot a gap and penetrate, swim back, rip through. He plays the run. He doesn't take reps off. He can get down the line. He hustles. He truly is looking like a legitimate star already. And just, I think it's so fun when dudes make it to the NFL and they just keep playing the same way they played in college, but it keeps working. Like he was just like, I wish I like, for me, like my head canon is them being like, Jared, like, okay, you got to develop like an inside move, or like, we're going to try and increase your flexibility to get some dip and bend. What do you think? And he's just like, no, I'm just going to keep going speed to power. They're like, yeah, but what else? He's like, I don't need anything else. I'm going to run. It's the Marshawn Lynch, like, I'm going to run through like an MFer's face over and over and over. And that's what he is. And so they're quality group up front, headed by Verse, get after him in the run. Also, some numbers from a Bills pass protection standpoint. Overall, they're tied for 9th in pass blocking efficiency, 13th lowest pressure rate. But the big one, Josh Allen this year, out of 42 qualifying QBs, he has the 3rd lowest pressure to sack percentage or rate in the NFL this year. He's got the 3rd lowest. Jordan Love has the 2nd lowest. Derek Carr has the lowest, which I would not have guessed. And no, I don't think anybody else would guess that either. Right? Go ahead.
Like, okay.
Right? Yeah, I was like, oh, I'll take it with a grain of salt. So Allen, 3rd lowest there at a rate of 9.8%, which is a career low for him. He traditionally is one of the best in the league when it comes to not letting pressures be converted into sacks. But this year he's been even better. Again, a 9.8 pressure to sack rate, career low for him, 3rd lowest out of 42 qualifying QBs. Can they get to Allen? Can they fluster him? Will they even get the chance because the Bills just mash and get first downs on the ground, or live in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3? That way you mitigate that Rams pressure rate and pressure game on 3rd down, keep play action open, make them play run to pass on the way to rushing the quarterback. I am very much in lockstep with you on that. And it's funny too, like I started watching some of the Rams tape from this week against Seattle against New Orleans. And I had a couple plays like marked, and I didn't get to that Verse one yet where he blitzed over. You're like, oh, he's got this rep against the Saints. I immediately was like, okay, I need to make note of that and keep eye for it. Man, yeah, there's always, I feel like he does something every week where I'm just like, up Jared Verse, and then like I have to make a note. Yeah, really good group up front and see.
He is, for me, the defensive rookie of the year so far, just in how he's elevated a Rams defensive line that was supposed to be a weakness and turned it into a strength. And just, again, we talk about a lot with speed to power. The same thing kind of happened with Will Anderson when he came out. We thought he needed more moves and counter moves to speed to power, and he's just like, no. Like,
yeah, no, I'm good.
I don't have to. It's like, okay, we'll just keep doing that. And it's just, it's incredible watching him just generate that force, because you can tell when he plants that foot in the ground at the top of his rush that somebody's going to go backwards.
Yeah.
Like, it's just incredible. But I think the thing that Verse has struggled with, and I think the Rams have struggled with, and you talked about it a little bit, they get a lot of pressure, but they don't finish very well. Yep. So we talked about all the pressure numbers that they have right now. They only have 28 sacks as a team, which is near average to below average this season. I think you can get after them if they don't finish plays.
Yep.
Because if the Rams aren't getting pressure or getting home with pressure, then you can attack the secondary. The secondary is a secondary.
They got some dudes, I guess.
It is one of these secondaries in the NFL. I mean, they just signed Emmanuel Forbes off waivers. That is where we're at.
Everything. Yeah.
That's where we're at with the Rams right now. So you can attack this team in the secondary, but that's only if you can evade some of that pressure.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great point in putting it together with, how many sacks they have, like you mentioned, the sack rate, like I mentioned, and then Allen not letting pressures get converted into sacks. So you've got this group that's great at creating pressure, not so great at finishing, like you said. Then you've got this quarterback who's amazing at not letting pressures get converted to sacks. So do one of those give, or does it just continue to play out and they get a pressure and Allen sidesteps or evades or escapes out the front door or the back door and then, creates, some off script, out of structure, phenomenon like he does with his legs or his arm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting kind of like chicken and egg scenario and how each one coalesces into each other. Very good point. Very good point. What do you have for your second piece?
So my second piece, I'm going to stay along the defensive line, but I'm going Riverside. I'm going with the Bills defensive front against this Rams offensive line.
Okay.
So Matthew Stafford, we know, is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when kept clean this year. I mean, it's hilarious just how good he is watching him operate from a clean pocket. But that changes when he is under pressure. When pressured, Matthew Stafford, I believe, according to Sumer Sports, among 30 qualifying quarterbacks, I believe he is 24th in EPA per play under pressure. And it's sort of what happens to guys when they get old. You just can't move. Like the movement doesn't move like it used to. Like the legs don't work like they used to before. Stafford has had a lot of injuries. And so now he's kind of a stationary pocket passer, but he beats that with his arm and his mind. But we have seen this year that this Rams offensive line, who has played so many different guys up front, that they haven't really gelled together. Jonah Jackson was playing center, then moved to guard, then got benched. Avila was playing center, now he's at guard. They have a new center. Joe Noteboom has not played well. Alaric Jackson hasn't played well. But this feels like the game where the Bills' defensive line should take over. This is a game where they outmatch their opponent. I think Greg Rousseau has played awesome this season. He has been one of the most impressive players for the Bills this season on the defensive side of the ball. This should be the game that he takes over. I believe he is 19th in ESPN's pass rush win rate, but he has done so well when it comes to blending moves together now and adding counters. So, he'll do a counter swim to his speed to power. He has the long arm that he's able to do. And so I think you can get after, especially Alaric Jackson, because he'll let guys into his chest. So if Rousseau can start getting home, if you can get some quality Von Miller pass rush snaps, you can really start to fluster Stafford and this offense. And just what you want to do with this team is just throw off the timing by a little bit.
Yeah.
Just make it so the music is being played at a different tune. Just make the pitch a little lower for one guy than is the other, and just try and make everything fall apart. So my biggest point is just this defensive line going up against a Rams front that is overmatched. They are overmatched, and this should be the game. They got to take over.
I like that. Some points to kind of go along with that. Greg Rousseau, some pass rush metrics amongst 228 qualifying defensive linemen, tied for 9th in pressures, tied for 2nd in QB hits, tied for 17th in pass rush productivity, tied for 14th in PFF's win rate, tied for 25th in sacks. So pretty good in a vacuum. Even better considering he's one of, if not the best run defending edge in all of football. It helps to be literally like a guy with tree trunks as arms, and he can cover like 3 gaps at once. But with how he plays the run, what he's starting to become as a pass rusher, you hit the big one. Like he's been kind of, ironically having the verse conversation, his go-to the first several years in the league was just trying to go through people. It was, use your, not so much speed to power as much as it was use your length, use your arms, use leverage, back guys up, figure out and go from there. Because of his size and how he's built, he doesn't have great change of direction. There is no dip and no bend. So he's not turning the corner. He's not dipping and ripping. There is none of that. This year, it's been, okay, I can go through and compress the pocket and drive guys back, or I can start to sell that and then break off and get inside. He's had some extremely clean wins with that inside move where it's instantaneous, and it started in the preseason and it continued all the way through. Yeah, he's really starting to come into his own. I like that comment from you. And so after you mentioned Stafford's numbers under pressure, I went and I looked these up. This is per Next Gen. These are kind of nuts for just how low they are. And to shade this too, right? Any quarterback under pressure, their EPA numbers are not good. No quarterback in the league has like positive, EPA when they're pressured. But from a total EPA standpoint, Lamar Jackson has the best EPA when under pressure this year at negative 0.4, which is actually super impressive. Derek Carr is second at negative 7.0. Right? I know we just keep coming back to Carr. So Carr is negative 7.0. Josh Allen is third at negative 15.1. So the top three guys are all in the negative. I just wanted to highlight, that's crazy good for Lamar at negative 0.4. Allen is third at negative 15.1. That's a huge drop. But those are the guys at the top, right? 34 qualifying quarterbacks. At the end of that list, number 34 is Matthew Stafford with an EPA under pressure of negative 95.4.
Oh, God.
That is brutal. It is the worst in the league. And again, that's from a total EPA standpoint. But if you said, hey, well, what is it per drop back? Maybe it's a little better. And you're right, it is. Instead of being 34th, he's 33rd at negative 0.71 EPA per drop back. So in case anybody doubted you or doesn't watch the tape or wanted to hear some numbers to it, yeah, that is absolutely brutal. And I think what's upsetting about it, because again, it shows on tape, but Stafford, he's not a guy who panics. He's a guy who can make all these amazing aesthetic throws, even when under pressure. So seeing those numbers and how stark they are from a bad, lens, it really is kind of jarring and shocking to see just how bad he is.
It's incredible to think about, especially when you think about how good this Rams team is when there is no pressure.
Yeah.
They are a machine when there's no pressure involved. But the minute there's pressure, like we said, Matthew Stafford is great, but he's also at the age and at the end point with his injuries that he can't really move. So he's not going to do a lot of the same stuff at a structure. What he's going to do is he's going to stand in there and he is going to throw the ball. Regardless of who's going to come and hit him, that ball is going to get thrown. Yeah. So the problem that the Rams have, and it's the same issue I think the Brady Bucks faced after the Super Bowl winning year, was the attrition along the offensive line. Nobody really was able to gel together.
Good call, yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing for an aging quarterback, especially we see it with Stafford, we see it with Rodgers in New York. If you don't have that offensive line in front of you, you don't have the ability to do the same stuff outside of structure as you used to, because that father time is undefeated. That's just going to happen. So getting pressure on Stafford has to be priority number 1, 2, and 3 when you drop back to pass, when the Rams drop back to pass, because if not, Stafford's going to carve you. He's going to get his. So you got to get pressure and try and force the issue a little bit.
Stafford has those when he gets pressure, especially with a free runner, if it's a big moment or something and he has to stand in there, he will. But he very much I feel when he gets pressured, especially with a free runner, it almost I can hear in his head being nah, F this. And he just chucks it. He's just getting it out. He's I'm not taking that hit. No, I'm not doing it. I've played hurt for forever. I've gotten drilled in Detroit game after game, rep after rep. I don't want to do that anymore. And it's just very much oh, here you come. Okay, I'm just dirting it, or I'm just chucking it. I don't care. I don't hit it.
It's when Peyton used to just slide when there was pressure. And I was all right, bump this. I'm good. Yeah. I'm too old for this. I think
that's fine.
We should bring that back. We need to bring that back. We need Jared Goff does it a little bit, where if there's pressure, he'll just hit the eject button.
He just turtles,
and just turtle. We need somebody to bring that back. We need somebody to just go, you know what? I'm good, and just fall.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot that Manningism. You know what? Also, one I forgot to. I saw it a couple weeks ago. The clip. Everyone always talks about the clip of him and Jeff Saturday getting into it on the sideline. I forgot about the one where he yells at, I think it's Dominic Brown for going the wrong way in pass pro. And he's just God dang it, Dominic. And you hear him and then he has to duck to avoid pressure, just accept it. You could see him getting up and Dominic Brown is what? Oh man, yeah, Manning. Yeah, exactly. He's what? And it's oh, I wonder why that didn't work out. So yeah, I like those points. I want to also stay on that side of the ball. We'll queue up some film to go into that as well. Before we do that, JP, I wanted to pull up this graphic that ties into a little bit of the overall conversation here and comes in line with our sponsor for this show, our friends and folks over there at BetUS. I was kind of taken aback by this graphic. This is the rushing touchdown leaders for 2024. Derrick Henry with 13, Jalen Hurts with 12, Saquon Barkley with 11, Joe Mixon with 11, David Montgomery with 11. All kind of, I think, expected. If you would have said these, I'd be like, okay, this makes sense. If you predicted this preseason, I'd be like, okay. James Cook also there with 11. I was not prepared for the amount of touchdown success James Cook would have this year. Granted, a couple of them have been like big house calls. He had one against San Francisco. He had one against Miami. But him starting to get work in the red zone and finding the end zone, he's run. And so I bring this up for a conversation piece and tying it into kind of a little bit of our first point. The way that he runs and the element that that's added to the Bills offense, the juice is still there. The speed is there, but he's running behind his pads more with more contact balance, with more physicality, and it's showing overall, but I think it's really reflected in the touchdown numbers overall, just getting across the goal line, but also the Bills being more confident, I think, and comfortable using him as they get closer to the goal line because the juice is still there to beat guys to the corner, but he can also run through you, just like what game 2 weeks ago, he, scampers to the front pylon. Oh, against the Chiefs 3 weeks ago, I should say. The bye week threw me off. That run, they run zone in the low red zone. It is not there. Chanel shoots, Tranquil's there, and Cook is like, okay, I'm just going to beat Tranquil around the corner and get to the front pylon and score for a 3-yard touchdown. Then he scores later on duo and runs through Cook and Bolton and another Chiefs defender. Like that aspect of physicality has really added a lot to his game. But more importantly, I think the Bills offense and more of that downhill, that duo nature we talked about against San Francisco. Yes, it was Ray Davis. There was a bunch of James Cook on duo as well, getting downhill.
I think the long touchdown was on duo where he bounced it.
Correct.
And Jair Brown just took the worst angle of all time.
And Cook erased it. He saw it and was like, skirt, and just out the front door, gone.
It looked like a high school team. But I think the thing that surprised me the most about James Cook is the improvement in trusting his eyes and his feet. I think a lot of times early in his career, he wouldn't trust what he's seeing and would bounce it because he thinks he's just a better athlete than everybody else on the field, because that's what everybody thinks when they're a young player. Like, I can just go do this because it was the same as in college.
Yeah.
But he has gotten so much better with his vision and his footwork with setting up blocks. On top of, like you said, he's always going to get every yard available. And I think that helps so much for this offense in just squeezing every single yard out of a run. If he's going to get 6, he's going to try and push it to 7. If he gets 7, he's going to try and push it to 9. And I think that's so important, especially in the red zone, because, again, the margin for error in the red zone is so slim because you don't have a lot of yards to work with. There's not a lot of field to work with. So you have to have good vision and you have to trust what you're seeing in front of you in order to execute some of those blocks. And I think he's done such a good job of running those duo runs where, he'll try and set up the guy either outside or inside, but he knows he has the perfect timing to bounce it if he wants to, or just take it behind somebody. So his improvement has really kind of stood out to me this season and even last season, but he has really come on this season as a true 3-down back.
Yeah, he's done a really good job. Zone was his forte, I think, at Georgia, just flowing like water. And okay, here's where I go. I'll fit and bounce and burst, and there we go. But duo, I like how you said that. I think that really highlights his vision and his understanding of pacing and timing. He can read that play side linebacker on duo and take his track right at him and fit accordingly. Okay, like he goes here, I'm going there. Okay, he goes there, I'm going there. Up, or everything is muddy on the inside. Cool. Let me bounce it and take the corner on one-on-one, and I can bubble and have the speed to get around the corner and get up the sideline. Or if the safety takes a poor angle and that's the unblocked defender I'm going against, I can beat him if he's not on point, which is what happened with Jair Brown. Same thing that happened with Jordan Poyer on the big run against Miami, which was also on duo. And that was the one where Miami was overprotecting to the weak side, thinking that the mid-zone weak was going to come. So they had duo, but it ended up being like a triple team, I think,
Yeah,
on
you get
their
like
nose.
three people trying down blocking on the nose, and it's just you leave the safety in such a terrible situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I called it Truo because it was like a triple team duo and they just got displaced. And then it's Poyer and Cook one-on-one. And Cook was like, no, I got too much space. Didn't even have to cut, just bent it and took it to the house. But yeah, I was actually surprised to see like just, and again, it makes sense. Like I don't regularly track like touchdowns and like the surface level stats, but seeing this on this graphic, I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Like he's found the end zone a lot this year. So thank you very much to our friends at BetUS for this graphic. And if you are looking for a new sportsbook this football season, BetUS is the answer. They give you the fastest payouts in the industry. They also give you a 150% bonus on your first deposit and then a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. They have the fast and easiest deposit and withdrawal process. 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business. They allow you to get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and they also can give you your very own personal account manager to go along with all of the above in their fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process. Check out BetUS for all your betting needs. Let's get into some film. And along with the second point that I have here, I kind of just blanketed it with the Bills defense versus Sean McVay. And then I figured we could talk about some. Yeah, I was like, I'm just umbrella terming this because I don't like, I'm not going to get into the weeds with it verbally, without the film piece. I've talked about it in the intro. You and I talked about it a bit already. Like just that nature of what this offense can be and how they operate. And what JP and I are going to do, we're just going to show 3 plays that kind of represent what the Rams do, and from an operation standpoint and a lot of it comes from 11 and 12 personnel. And from a number standpoint, the Rams this year, shock, 83% 11 personnel usage rate, and then
I think that's down. I think that number's down.
It is. I did an in-depth study on the Rams, Lions, and Texans this offseason because I thought they would be 3 offenses and systems that the Bills could borrow a lot from going into this year. And I'm pretty sure the Rams 11 personnel usage rate last year was 93% or 92. Like they were in the low 90s. It was super high. So yeah, that's so wild. Yeah, good. I totally forgot about that. It's here like that's down. Yeah, it is down from last year. So 83% 11 personnel usage rate, which is the second highest in the league this year. And then they pair that with a 16% 12 personnel usage rate. So 99% of the time, they're either in 11 or 12, with 83% of that being 11 personnel. And again, makes sense. Kupp and Nakua, even DeMarcus Robinson this year, their 11 personnel gives them the opportunity to obviously pass the football, but they can also mash you in the run because Kupp and Puka and DeMarcus Robinson can all block and do stuff. They even got Tutu Atwell to be like a competent blocker at times last year. Like they're able to just do that there. But whether it's out of 11 or 12, the key thing here and what the film is going to show, how the Rams use similar presentations and window dressing elements for different concepts in both the run and the pass. Sean McVay has the ability to make so many things look like so many things. He mitigates the confidence you feel as a defense in terms of identifying a tell or a tendency, and he starts it off early in every game. He shows those looks and those reps early to plant those seeds into your brain of like, oh, here comes this thing pre-snap. But it could be like 4 different things post-snap. So I guess I got to read it out and I can't really like try and get an advantage. Or if you do, you're purely guessing. It's like a pitcher who can throw 4 different pitches from the same arm angle. You're just like praying like, all right, man, I'm going to look fastball and I hope he throws me a fastball. And if I get it, I get it. If he throws one of the other 3, I'm dead in the water. And like that, those are the kind of the odds you're kind of just playing with there. But let's dive into some of the plays here. And so this first play that we have queued up as I find my way to my screen here. Where is my huddle screen? There it is. All right. So this first one, and I have it highlighted up there. So we have a 2x2 stack with Puka over there, and he's going to come across the screen in jet motion. And I don't know why I can't. Hold on. JP, tell us some things about the Rams that you like never mind, I found it. Oh, man. Wilding out here. Okay, there we go. First, the 2x2 stack with Puka. He's going to come across in jet motion. And what's nice here, JP, super simple. You've seen this. We went over it a little bit. Super simple. 2x2 stack, Puka in jet motion, and we're just going to run split zone. Nothing crazy. Here comes Puka. There comes the split zone. Good gain against a good Vikings defense, right? Nothing crazy. 2x2 split zone. Any initial thoughts on this? Or are you cool if I go to the second play?
Yeah, I think it's a good way of showing how the Rams just kind of poke at you. Like
Yes.
they stress you. And it's like, okay, here's Puka in motion. Like this could be anything. And then if you see how wide of an angle, I believe that's it's not Van Ginkel. It might be Van Ginkel actually.
Yeah, it is
If you
Van
see
Ginkel
how
coming around
wide
right here.
he takes, if you see how wide of an angle he takes, he does that because he's worried about the boot.
Yeah.
He's worried about Stafford booting out and the tight end just slipping right behind him. And that's how you have that cutback lane. And then all the motion from Puka completely draws everybody to the front side. So that cutback is free.
Exactly. Great call. So, yeah, Van Ginkel takes that wide route because he's playing boot, which helps that sniffer tight end come across on the split zone. And the result is a massive hole for Kyron to just get upfield and take advantage of a good Minnesota defense who at this point in the year, and even still now, was like causing chaos for offenses. Great call. So, again, for everyone playing at home, 2x2, stack up top, jet motion from Puka into split zone. Okay, nothing crazy. Let's watch it go through. Bang. All right, next play. This is literally 2 plays later. We have an ace formation from the Los Angeles Rams, but it still functions into the whole 2x2 idea. Once again, we're going to get jet motion from Puka Nacua. But this time, and again, remember, 2 plays ago, they ran jet motion and they ran split zone. Now we're going to get that jet motion. We're going to bluff the split zone, and then we're going to throw a screen to Puka Nacua. So here's Puka down here. What are we going to get? Here comes the jet motion. Stafford taps his foot. Here we go. And so you just saw this 2 plays ago. You just saw a very similar idea, very similar presentation. Again, a little bit different in terms of the formation from an exact standpoint, but similar idea, similar presentation. Here comes the jet. Here comes that sniffer tight end coming away from it. Stafford sticking the ball out. Nope. Play action. And now Puka before was just a decoy. He was just there for window dressing. Stafford drops back, hits the top of his drop. And what do we get? A nice screen to Puka. And just look at all the space. And Puka's so good yards after the catch. I really like how these two tie in together. That first one that was just a simple, hey, send him in jet motion, run split zone. And then now you're showing a similar action and using the guy who is purely window dressing with no value other than that. Now you're using him as the primary target on a screen. The offensive line does a good job getting out in front, and this is a really good gain for the Rams.
It's such a smart way of using your personnel. I think Puka Nacua is awesome, but Puka is at his best when in motion and he's able to use yards after the catch. He's an incredibly strong and well-built receiver. So you want to get him in those situations, and they just dress it up so well. And they'll throw a lot of screens to Puka. It is their form of easy offense.
That's a good call. Yeah, easy button. So this is nice, right? Nice little screen to Puka. Good job. Good job by Van Ginkel getting downfield. So, again, for those playing at home, 2x2, jet motion, split zone. 2x2, ace formation, jet motion, screen to Puka, who's the jet. Third play now. This is early into the second quarter. So, again, the idea of planting these seeds early on. The first 2 plays we showed were early in the first quarter. 2 plays apart, kind of planting those seeds. Now we get an ace formation again in the second quarter. Very similar to what we just saw on the second play that we showed. What are we going to get again? We're going to get the jet motion from Puka, but now it's not just jet motion. It's a jet sweep, and we're going to give the ball to Puka, and now there's space. Look at the impact that it has on 90 right there. Just, 3 very similar presentations, 3 very similar actions, very similar formations and alignments, 3 completely different results, all based off this one little thing of motion. And JP, like we talked about earlier, like this is just one element that they have. Like, so imagine this within the entire offense, within an entire game, with all these other players. That's the level of detail and manipulation McVay operates with. He can just use such a simple thing as like this kind of formation and alignment and this one motion and get to multiple things out of it in a very similar presentation, in a very similar fashion. And we saw on each one the way the defense presents differently and how they have to operate accordingly. And the result that these are 3 positive, very positive gains for the Rams on each one. And they're setting it up early. So now when they go back to it later, now you're like, oh, here comes the jet. Is it going to be the sweep? Is it going to be a screen? Is he going to continue out and run the wheel, which he will? Is he going to come out and run the wheel, but it's actually a deep hitch and he's going to hook it up? Like, there's so many things you have to account for.
And not only that, they'll use motion in the run game with their tight ends. Their tight ends aren't the biggest, so they're just not going to be like monsters against defensive ends when they run the counter and power duo stuff. They'll bring them in motion, and they'll have them running full speed at this defensive end. But I actually think there's a rep they had against the Patriots where it was actually pretty fun what they did. So they ran counter, but instead of having the backside tackle,
I know. Yep, I know what you're talking about. Keep
kicks out the edge, and I think the tight end comes wrapping behind him.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, I've never seen counter block like this. That's pretty fun. They'll run so many different variations. Like they'll run HH counter, GH counter. They'll throw so much stuff at you using that motion. And I think that's such a great point to add.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that Patriots play because I remember seeing McVay is one of those dudes that I see him do stuff and it makes me question like the principles of what I know. I'm like, is that counter? And I'm like, no, it is because there's the down blocks and here's this and here's this, but it makes me be like, what concept is this? Because it just, and again, it's nothing like, I don't want to downplay it, but it's nothing like he didn't reinvent the wheel. Like he's just getting to it in different ways. And it's such a complicated offense, but also like simplistic within that complication and how he wields guys and how he uses them and puts them in those different areas. Wanted to show that a little bit on the film here instead of just kind of going over it with the words. Part of the reason I did that too is because I sound terrible because I am a little sick. So I was like, okay, I can use the film and not have to do too much talking. Even though I had to talk through the presentation, I guess I didn't really think this through. But yeah, just that ability to use similar presentation and window dressings for different concepts in both the run and the pass. It's not even like you can whittle it down and be like, okay, I know a breaking ball is coming, so it's going to be something a little slower. Like there's like 3 different breaking balls he's going to throw, like, or 3 different off-speed type stuff. So it could be a curve, it could be a slider, it could be a changeup. Like it's not just like fast or slow. You can't bucket him. There's still so many possibilities within those buckets. And I think the film kind of highlighted that, kind of putting that into perspective, what the Bills are going to have to account for on that side of the ball, which is a very, very big test. JP, anything else on that point, or do you want to move to your number 3?
So your point actually ties a little bit into my third point. And my third point actually is, and it's kind of just a general thing, it is how the Bills defend motion. Because I think how teams have defended the Rams this year has been really interesting considering who they have personnel-wise. So I just want to start off with how absurd the Rams are when it comes to using motion. So the Rams have 115 passing attempts this season to a target that was in motion. The next highest is the Miami Dolphins at 84.
Oh,
this is what they do. They will get you in motion, and you are probably getting the ball.
Yeah.
You are going to have to run a country mile. And what they do off of it, you see so many teams, it requires so much stamina by the receiver. They'll have that receiver running in motion. They'll have him run dagger. They'll have him run the dig on dagger. And it's absurd. Like, why are you making this guy run this far? So they use this motion to create leverage and angles like we talked about at the top. They use it to create space. There's so much about angles and geometry and using the available space that you have on a football field. And the Rams maximize every single blade of grass with motion. However, I do think there is something the Rams haven't been good at in the passing game, and that is defending when teams throw man coverage at them. So, among quarterbacks with 80 passing attempts this season, according to Sumer Sports, Matthew Stafford is 12th in the NFL in EPA per play against zone. He shreds zone. He has seen everything to see
every
against
coverage
zone.
ever.
Yeah, he's seen every coverage ever. Like that's the benefit of playing so long.
Yeah.
But among that same play requirement against man coverage, Matthew Stafford is 32nd in the NFL at a negative 0.12 EPA per play. And I think this is important because we're kind of getting to the point in Cooper Kupp's career where he's kind of doing that aging gracefully into a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1B. But the problem is I don't think Puka Nacua is that fantastic against man coverage, which is why they have him be the motion guy so much.
Yeah,
you want to get him into free releases. You want to get him against off coverage so he can use that speed to kind of build up into creating separation. He can't do that off of press by himself. I think this was important in last year's draft process. There were rumors about them wanting to trade up for Brock Bowers. It is in my latest mock draft, I decided to be a little evil and give them Arizona's Teteroy McMillan because you needed a guy to beat man coverage. Will it happen? I don't know, but I think that'd be pretty cool.
That would be sick. Also, could you imagine if they had gotten Bowers with McVay? How cool would that be?
I think the Raiders might have saved the future of the NFL if Sean McVay got Brock Bowers, because then you had the guy to beat man.
Yeah.
So
dude.
I think for the Bills, who predominantly they do play a lot of zone coverage, but I think they have the guys to play man against this team. I think Christian Benford's been awesome this year, as has Rasul Douglas been. But I think how they defend that motion and how they stress those rules, because not only will they motion across the field, they'll do that exit motion that the Dolphins did, like that everybody stole last year, but they'll also motion to get in and out of bunches and stacks. So they'll create the leverage and they'll create these free releases for Puka, for Cooper Kupp. And then that you get into all the traditional Ram stuff. You get into the high lows. You get into the choice routes. You get into what they'll do a lot of is they'll have Puka run a lot of outbreakers. Well, there'll be comebacks. There'll be out routes. And then, of course, just Stafford will rip like 7 digs where you're just like, dang, like you tried. Like that's really like the biggest thing. He'll do something instant. He'll have a no-look pass where you're just like, okay, you got us. So I think the biggest thing for the Bills is, if I'm going to emphasize a few things for the Bills, it is communication against this team because of how much motion and how much zone the Bills play. And they do a good job of matching coverages. I actually talked a little bit about this with DeMar Hamlin at the Super Bowl in Vegas, where I asked him how well they do in matching coverages when they're playing zone. And he was like, yeah, that just comes from just constantly drilling it and being like, okay, if this guy goes here, we study it. We see if this guy goes here, I'll take him, you take him. So it requires so much stress of communication and those guys playing together on a string that you have to be able to pass off those routes in that zone if you're going to try and beat this team. And then it comes down to rallying and tackling. Like you said, the Rams have switched more from being a downfield kind of boot action team to we're going to hit you with yards after the catch. You have to be able to tackle in space against this team, especially against Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp is not what he was, but he still can give you a little wiggle. Kyron Williams will make you miss. You have to stress. You have to stress communication. You have to stress execution. You got to be perfect against this Rams team coverage wise, because if you're not, they will find the weakness and they will hammer you.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and especially with it, with them being quarterbacked by Stafford, he can find that weakness quickly. He can find that pain point, and then once they've identified the pain point, they apply pressure. And they attack, and they attack, and they attack. And I like the motion element. It was one of my, I was debating going more like niche down for my second or my third point. I ended up not, because I've talked about it so much on the shows. And especially everybody from the Shanahan tree has found varying levels of success against the Bills defense when it comes to motion. From back I'm thinking the Packers game a couple years ago on Sunday night when they were just using motion to manipulate the second level, and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon were just hammering. We actually even saw some success for the Jets under Mike LaFleur that same year, earlier that year, because I remember being like, oh, no surprise that the Packers did the same thing the Jets did, because one, they come from the same tree, but also like they're brothers. And I'm pretty sure LaFleur called Mike and was like, hey, what'd you guys do like 4 weeks ago? And they just emulated the same thing. And the Bills have had success against Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins offense overall, but the Dolphins have done a great job when they commit to the run and the game script doesn't make them get away from it. The Dolphins have had tremendous success running the football with their motion and how they do. And again, a lot of it is the Bills defense. We know what it is because it is zone-based, because they usually play light boxes and a nickel-based defense. Like, okay, if you motion this guy, they're going to bump over. Like, they have to bump. They're playing numbers. They're playing space. They're playing angles. And if you time that motion correctly, or you use that motion to mislead and manipulate, you can catch them after you've set them up on the wrong angles. I mean, we even saw it early on against San Francisco with McCaffrey before he went down. Like, they're using that blast motion from Juszczyk to make you think, oh, it's going over here, let's bump over. And then McCaffrey, I think it was like the second run of the game.
It was that toss counter.
Yes.
That's beautiful. I used to play linebacker, and that would piss me off so much. Because all the tells, it looks like toss. It looks like toss. Boom, he cuts it back the other way, and now the defensive coordinator is mad at you. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? Every rule told me that was toss. And then Juszczyk comes back around and McCaffrey's running for 20 yards.
Yep. And that second level, yeah, that would piss me off if I was a linebacker. That's a good call. Bernard and Milano both bump with Juszczyk's initial blast motion. So then when the zone comes, so it ends up playing like toss counter, like split zone kind of deal. That whole offensive line washes down, and they wash down in the angle. Now Bernard and Milano are caught behind that wall. Juszczyk is taking out the edge, and McCaffrey just has this huge lane to run through, and he gets there. But again, that's another example, like motion, manipulating the second level. And that happened a couple times in the game. Even with Jordan Mason, they were creating leverage. They were creating angles to take advantage of it. I wonder if the Rams can have that success and emulate some of that, because again, similar tree, similar idea. And I do think that book is out a little bit. You can get the Bills on the ground to a degree, and you can manipulate their second level and the defense in general with motion and take advantage of their aggression and their fast penetrating type nature, and then sideline to sideline at the second level in conjunction with the, penetrating nature up front. So I think of that. I love your point about the man coverage element. Puka's good. Kupp is good. Benford and Douglas both have size and athleticism and good coverage ability. And I know I don't want to sound like disrespectful to like Puka or Kupp, but with how Rasul and Benford play, I really am almost tempted to just be like, yo, we're going to play press man this game. Just get up and jam them at the line and do not let them get off, and beat the hell out of them for 60 minutes and kind of see what happens. But then to your point, the Rams, if they're feeling that a little bit, they're going to motion into stacks or bunches, and they'll figure out a way to try and get some free releases. I am interested to see how much man they play in this game, because to your point, I do think that is a matchup where the Bills are not going to be scared. I don't think the Bills are going to be worried about getting beat by, Puka and Kupp necessarily in man. I would be worried about getting beat in man in the low red zone against Demarcus Robinson. He has one of the nastiest, like, hey, I'm going to run the slant, psych, it's actually a whip route and I'm wide open, but he doesn't turn his body. It's like the fake slant, and it's almost Devontae Adams-esque, and he just stabs and pops back out to like the slot or gets flat. Oh, it's really pretty in that aspect. Yeah, I do wonder how much they play man versus sticking in their normal zones, sticking into their match coverages. Like you mentioned, great nugget there about you talking to DeMar. They're so good at the communication aspect and passing everything off. It's why they can afford to, no disrespect to DeMar, no disrespect to Taylor Rapp, why they can have both of their safeties. Neither of them are like the rangiest, ball hawkiest type of dudes. Like, their secondary is just well coached. They're sound. They do their job because it's drilled into them. They pass off well. So you have this really good sound secondary and coverage unit versus this quarterback and play caller who know how to pick you apart at a moment's notice. I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really intriguing one.
It's really intriguing because if you let Stafford get hot, this could go really poorly for the Bills defense because if Stafford is on, he is like one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league because he'll just rip these high lows and he'll just blast you every single time. I think I keep thinking of I was in person at the Super Bowl when the Rams won and that no look to Cooper Kupp.
Oh my God, yeah.
He does that every week now.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, that's just Matthew Stafford. And that's what you worry about in zone coverage because he's seen every zone coverage known to man.
Yep.
So now he knows which man to manipulate in that coverage. And you worry about him picking out a guy during this game and going like, okay, you are going to be the one I go against. It's like when you have the guy in the starting 5 and you're playing a team and they figure out he is the weak link defensively and they just involve him in every pick and roll. And it's like, all right, we have found that guy and we're going to go at him for the entire game. So you just worry about that in zone coverage. But I think in man, you limit the ability to pick on one guy because you're sticking to him all the time. If you can beat man, that's like, all right, cool. They got me. But you're not going to get them all the time. In addition, you're not worried about Stafford's mobility. Yeah. So I'd be fine with sticking in man because I wouldn't be shocked if they start sending some more pressures, some man pressures, because again, this Rams offensive line is not the greatest and haven't played very much together. So if you can force them to mess with the protections, I think Miami did that a little bit where they forced them to be wrong a lot. And it kind of flustered Stafford. If you can get after them up front and get after Stafford with pressure, then you limit the risk. Like it's a risky thing because you can get beat over the top with blitzing, of course. Yeah. But you want to force the issue against this team. You don't want Stafford sitting back there and figuring out the weak link. You got to try and speed that up a little bit.
I think that's a great point. Like and as you were speaking, like that was going to be my like wrap with that point of you're not going to just more often than not, especially from a zone perspective, you're not just going to get like a coverage sack against Stafford. Like somebody's going to come open or he's going to make some stupid layered throw with anticipation, 15 yards downfield to Puka. And you're just like, dude, like really, you got to heat him up quickly. You cannot give him like 2.5 to 3.5 seconds because someone's either coming open or he's going to throw them open. You have to force the issue. Like you said, I love that point. Like, kind of, I don't want to say live and die by the blitz, but live and die by like heating up Stafford. Make him do what we joked about earlier, where he sees that free rusher and he's like, nah, screw this, I'm out. And he just dirts it because he doesn't want to take that hit. That's how you beat him. That's how you attack this offense. I really like that point. And that ties a little bit into, I only do this for like certain teams who have like players I really like or like schemes I really like. This third point, I just kind of blanketed it, like limit the impact of the Rams studs on both sides of the ball. And you alluded to it a little bit, like even though he's a little older, even though he's struggling this year under pressure and he doesn't want to take hits and all that, Matthew Stafford is still very capable of doing Matthew Stafford stuff. The guy who made that ridiculous throw against the Bengals in the Super Bowl, that guy is still in there, and he's made maybe not that ridiculous, but several stupid, ridiculous throws this year. Like you said, on Diggs, like he's throwing it in like the second window, the first window on Dig. He's throwing it over linebackers and in front of the safety. He's hitting, hole shots to Puka. He's throwing outs over the curl flat defender and in front of the corner or in front of the, like just what he's able to do, sometimes even under pressure. But when you give him the opportunity and once he gets in that rhythm, once he makes that first Stafford throw, more of those start to come. And it's almost like McVay feeds off of it and the offense feeds off it a little bit and they get kind of juiced up and jazzed up about it. Like, so don't let Matt Stafford do Matt Stafford things. Kupp and Puka, I love your point about Kupp. Like, I do think he's starting to get into the point where he's not like a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but he's still super good. And it helps because his game was never predicated upon like being the fastest or the best athlete. His game was all predicated on like being a technician and operating with refinement, his stems, his route running, his leverage, what he is as a blocker. And then Puka, honestly, kind of in a similar way, just tougher after the catch from like a physicality standpoint and different size and frame as well. But you cannot let those guys, and I know some of this is on McVay for how he weaponizes them, but you just cannot let them impact. You can't have Puka be that guy where he's got 12 catches in this game for like 150 something yards. Or maybe he does and you limited everything else and Stafford only throws for like 170. But Kupp and Puka are both capable of being those dudes who can get double-digit catches, 100-plus yards. And that's usually what it is. It's not 10 catches for 200. It's like 10 for 90 or like 11 for 112 because it's all these like 6 to 12-yard catches that just get you. It's 7 yards on 3rd and 5. It's 9 yards on 3rd and 6, and just little by little, and like the way they can get you, do not let them get going. Those three, especially on that side of the ball. Defensively, we talked about him a bit already. Jared Verse is so nasty. Do not let him game wreck, whether it's the run, whether it's the pass. The Bills love to use their tight ends. We'll see if Dalton Kincaid plays in this game. Jared Verse murders tight ends who try to block him in the
do not block him with a tight end. No. I think he sees that as disrespect.
Absolutely.
He will send your tight end into the bleachers.
Yes, he will shadow realm your tight end in a heartbeat. And Knox has become a good blocking tight end, especially from an inline perspective. Quentin Morris is a banger. Verse is better than both of them in that run blocking and that run defense matchup. I am interested a little bit to see if Kincaid plays in this one. I mean, they don't line him up a ton as like the inline guy when they attach him to the formation and stuff, but I am very interested to see like if Kincaid plays, even if he was 100% healthy, but if he plays being a little banged up, how much do they avoid kind of keeping him around the line of scrimmage or attached to it to avoid having to get him matched up against Verse, or having even on the other side, like Byron Young's got some nastiness to him. Like he'll lick his chops and go through like a tight end as well. I expect to see more 6 offensive lineman sets from the Bills in this game. So you can put Alec Anderson on Verse and you can try and match big on big, fire with fire, and be like, yo, just go mash against Verse. And if Verse gets you, cool, he got you, but at least it's not like a mismatch. I feel like you just have to limit him on that side of the ball. Give yourself some time, like we talked about, and then pick apart that secondary. But for me, it's really those 4. Like, don't let Matt Stafford do Matt Stafford things. Limit Kupp and Puka. Don't let Jared Verse be a game wrecker. The Rams, I like what they've done the past couple of drafts. Their team, though, is this like interesting blend of like high-low player variance, or like high-end versus low-end talent. But the high-end guys can still take over a game, and you forget that they have like a bunch of subpar starters at a bunch of spots. And but you forget about that because they have some really good dudes, and they have Sean McVay. I also think that helps us make us forget that like they still have arguably the worst uniforms in the NFL. I hate looking at them every single time. I hate them. Like, and I hate that they won a Super Bowl with those uniforms. Those uniforms so bad.
I hate what the uniforms have become. Like the Rams uniforms used to be so cool. Like the navy blue Rams uniforms used to be so cool, and now you've kind of gone away from what made you cool.
Yeah.
So it feels like you're just going. I think this a lot about uniforms. We have gone so far when it comes to modernization of them that they kind of lose the quirkiness.
Yes.
And like the fun characteristics of them. Like we don't need a sleek Rams. It's a Ram. Rams aren't sleek.
No, it's a Ram. They're the opposite of sleek. Like they're like clunky and like blunt. Like I would have been fine. It's funny, all the different iterations. Like I didn't love the gold and navy blue swap from the yellow and navy, but I would take that over these. But they had the yellow and the navy, go with it. Or even if you wanted to stick with like the weird or the original like Jeff Fisher ones that they brought back from like the early days. You wanted to do the white with the blue. Like, okay, I'll go with that. I don't know how they got like even the shades of yellow and blue are weird, and then how it fits together, and then like the gray, it looks very cartoonish, but not in like a fun cartoon way, like a cartoon that I hate and like I don't want to watch. Yeah, I
like
don't.
A college team.
It looks like San Jose State.
Yeah, San Jose State.
Yeah, is the one that always comes to my mind. But that's what, like, they're like a college. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that can be your school colors and you're this and that. Like, you're a school, whatever. You are a professional football team and you won a Super Bowl in these uniforms. Like, they're so ugly. They're so bad. It pisses me off. And
It's frustrating.
and especially too, like, you play in LA. Those are your jerseys? Like, no team in the NFL should have like bad jerseys. But LA, you are like this hub of culture and design and like fashion and like all this creativity in a variety of forms and fashions. You could have picked some like cool street graffiti artist to come like design those uniforms in a day and they probably would have been dope. Like, I don't know who designed I hate them. I hate looking at them. And it pisses me off too because I watch the Rams are one of like the non-Bills teams that I pretty much watch like every single week, at least on one side of the ball, if not both. The Cardinals have been my number one this year. I've watched every single Cardinals game.
Fun.
Bro, they
so
are
fun.
on offense and defense. Like, I love everything that they're doing. And you know, it's funny, like, we talked so much about the Cardinals when I had you on to do Bills Cardinals to start the year. And so much of like what we said they could be is, especially offensively, is what they've become. And it's been so fun. Yeah, I watch them every single week. And the Rams a bit as well. But yeah, I hate the Rams uniforms and it makes me sad. That's why I usually, like, no joke, I'll watch the Rams. And then when I get to the point where their uniforms have pissed me off, I put the Cardinals tape on to cleanse the palate and make me feel better.
A little refresher.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear you, man. It kind of fits like what the Rams have been this season. They've been a frustrating watch.
Yeah.
Because again, the highs are so high with this team. When they're on, it's still one of the best teams in the NFL when they're on. But when they're off, it just looks disjointed. Like it looks like a team that just got put together this week. So I think for the Bills, be wary of death by choice route. That has always been the Rams. That has been Cooper Kupp's thing. Be wary of death by choice route. You're going to see a lot of it against zone, against man. Mm-hmm. You'll see the choice route by Cooper Kupp underneath, and then somebody's running a dig behind it. And Stafford is either going to choose the choice route or he's going to fire that dig.
High-low you to death. You will hear that phrase a ton. Yeah, I feel like that's such a – I feel like Shanahan wanted to get to some of that stuff on Sunday versus the Bills, but nobody could stop.
Nobody could run.
I felt, and it was funny too. I didn't notice it on broadcast. The very first play for the Niners offense, they try to send Jennings.
And he slips and falls.
Yeah, immediately. He tries to turn and just fade. And I'm like, oh, dude, like, I just felt so bad. Like,
it's the team from California.
So that, and I actually think they did a decent point on the broadcast, pointing it out. Like, this is, granted, there wasn't as much snow in the game they talked about, but this is the team that went to like Green Bay in the playoffs and mashed Green Bay and had no problem. I thought the same thing. I literally said that to my wife during the game. I was like, the Niners look like this soft California team that's not ready to come play like East Coast November and December football. And I know they're super injured. And I don't want to use that as like to give them a pass or an excuse or anything, but I know that plays a role. But I just never would have thought that about the 49ers. Like, their whole team plays like velociraptors. No fear. They're angry. They're mean. They definitely looked like, oh no, the snow. Like, nobody could get their footing. They looked like they didn't want to be there. Like, yeah, I was not. And I know they're hurt. I wasn't expecting to see that level of like clunkiness and poor coordination and just morale, I guess, from the Niners. It was a weird mix that, I just felt like they were tapped out. I kind of felt that way earlier in the week, though. Once Fred Warner came out and was like, yeah, my ankle is basically broken, yada, yada. I felt like that was like...
Yeah, he said he like fractured a bone in his ankle against the Patriots in week 4 and was still playing. And I'm like, please, man. That's why I say linebackers are not real people. They're not. Like, what do you mean you're playing on a fractured ankle?
Yeah, what are you talking about? Like, what you... I literally thought, I was like, it's not like, oh, yeah, it's like my hand and I can cast it up. Like, how... You have a crack in your ankle? And he's still playing good. Like, he's making plays, but also to me, it made me think like, usually that's the thing that comes out when like you get eliminated from the playoffs and it's like, oh, well, this happened. And you're like, oh, okay. You don't put that out in like week 12 or 13 or whatever. That made me kind of feel like it was like, yo, I know our season's over. I'm telling everybody that my ankle is broken because I'm tired of getting dragged over the coals by everybody for saying how bad we are and how bad I'm not playing. Like I'm saying this, like, oh, and one of the comments says, I think you could still play with a fracture. You can, but that's
In an
not easy.
ankle?
Yeah, dude,
Like,
your ankle.
you can play with like a fractured hand. You like, especially at linebacker, you can play with a fractured hand. But if you can't run, I think we kind of saw it on the Josh Allen scramble.
Yes, he couldn't plant and then get
where
back
it's
up.
like Josh Allen redirects and Fred Warner normally catches up to him. He can't move. And that's why I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this season is over for the Niners. Like it felt like that season was over. I think after Debo fumbled the kickoff return,
Yes,
I think I posted like, hey, we need to send this team back to California before somebody catches the cold.
that's
Like,
right.
we got to that point.
The one when I really thought like because they had moved the ball well, and then the Kyle Juszczyk fumble like inside the 5, right as he's about to score, I was like, oh, they're done. And then the Debo, and I was just like, it's just not. All these things that were like, how do you know when it's not your day? Like the Debo kick return, or the Debo, and then the Juszczyk fumble, and then Warner not being able to move to get Allen, and then Warner's reaction after it was very much just like, this sucks. Like you could just read his body language through the screen, and like just I felt for him because he's a warrior and he's awesome. Yeah, yeah, no. Oh, this is funny. Should have played better with the weather numbing the ankle good. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Maybe the weather numbed it up. Like that's man.
See,
That's
I'm from Florida. I don't know if like weather numbing the ankle is like a thing for me. That's just you. Good luck, man.
So what I'm thinking of is because obviously being from the cold weather, it could numb it a little bit, but when you get hit on it, it reverberates through your whole body.
That cold weather shit hurt.
Yeah, dude. Like if you've ever played ball in the cold and you've gotten a helmet to your elbow, you feel like your whole arm just got disconnected from your body. Like it hurts. Everything is magnified from a pain perspective. Yeah. That man, poor 49ers. We'll see what happens for the Rams, what they can do. We went long on this episode, as I knew. Actually, you know what? No, we did decent. We came in under an hour and a half. I think the last time you were here, or maybe 2 times ago, we did like an hour and 45, hour 50, almost pushed 2, I think. So I guess, we went long, maybe kind of short for us, potentially. But
this is a short one for us. We kept it efficient. But
I'm blaming it on 100%. Like, every time I speak, I can hear how I sound, and I hate it. And so that's definitely like a huge problem. Like I'm sick and I sound terrible. So yeah, maybe we won't go the full 2. You crushed it as always. Any final thoughts on this game, on either team, anything at all that's on your mind? Or if you want to talk about the New Day and how me and Kofi and Woods were to E last night.
Oh, my heart.
Your timeline was one of like the funniest things. Like you literally like, it was like a tweet of like, oh man, Big E came out. And then the comment after it, like 2 minutes later in all caps, was like, why are they being mean to E? And it was just spiraling from there.
It felt like I was watching families break up. It felt like I was watching a brother break up. I was like, oh no, my heart. Yeah. Like I think I tweeted like after, I'm like, Woods and Kofi are going to hell for that. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you being mean to that man? Like the fact that he was like, I broke my neck, and Kofi was like, so what? What do you mean, so what?
He was like, you were selfish. I was like, oh my God.
He broke his neck. It's honestly an incredible heel turn because everybody is now like, everybody hates the New Day.
Yes. Which is
like,
good.
that's how you know you got him.
Yeah.
When like everybody is in like, okay, like these dudes suck. And it was a complete 180 from what I thought was going to happen. I thought Big E would come out and everything would be patched over.
Same.
Or we would have a split. They split Kofi and Woods.
Gotcha.
I didn't think that Woods and Kofi would unite against E.
Right. So, and then like E goes to like leave the ring, but he comes back and he's like, no, like I'm not giving up on us. And then like he goes for the hug. And Kofi puts the hand right in his chest, and he's like, so that's how it's going to be, Kofi. And I was just like, oh, yeah, poor. Like, I felt, oh, man, just poor E. But your post just got me. It was the all caps follow-up of why are they being mean to E? And I just, and I know how much you like the New Day. And I was like, oh,
I love the New Day, man. I fell to my knees watching that. I'm sitting there ready to crash out. And it's just like why y'all being mean to that man? He coming out for it was a 10-year anniversary.
I know.
They did this on the 10-year anniversary, man. Why you doing this in front of the people?
That's so cold-blooded. Yeah. It's just funny too for me with you, because I remember when you tweeted, I think it was a couple months ago. I think your love for the New Day in terms of like even thinking too of them being like one of, if not the best, like tag teams of all. I think you said something of like you thought they were better than the Young Bucks or something along those lines. So like I know how much they mean to you, and last night was just I was just watching you crash out.
When you juxtapose the Players Tribune story Big E wrote about the New Day saving his life, for Kofi to come back like almost 8 hours later and say, "I don't care that you broke your neck." I was going through a spiral at that point. Like I was done. Like he broke his body for y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all better be nice to him.
I felt so bad. Yeah. That really got me. Yeah, I felt for you too. I was like, oh damn, man. And yeah, just watching you tweet it out. I was like, this is the crash out right now. Yeah.
This is I found it too. I think the first one was like, if they break up the New Day, I'll cry. Then next, all caps. Oh, thank God, Big E is here.
Yeah, that's it.
Then the next one, all caps. Talk to him, Big E. Then the thread, the next tweet. Wait, why are they turning on E? Stop it. That's what like that is when it turned. And I was like, wait a minute, what's happening?
It read to me like, because we've all had that wrestling kid. It read to me like the 8-year-old, like with their parent being like, yeah, here they come. Like he's coming. It's going to be fine. And then being like, Dad, like, why are they being mean to E? Like, that's just
like, y'all stop being mean to that man. He's doing his best.
He he did his best. Oh, poor. And he's a Florida man like you. Yeah, just hit you right in the feels. Man, this was a good way to end. Sorry, I interrupted you. The floor is yours. Anything you want to say on anything about the game, anything about your work, where everybody can find you, anything you want, however long you want to go, the floor is yours. Whatever you got.
Well, one of the last things I will say about this game is I think Joe Brady has done such a good job of understanding what works within a game and then just hammering it. Like we talked about with a duo against the Niners. If something is working, you don't have to stop calling it. Like you don't have to try and show off that you have such this vast playbook of plays. Just run the stuff that works and don't run the stuff that doesn't. Like it's that easy at that point. Like if you're good at running duo, just keep running it. If the Rams cannot defend duo on Sunday, don't stop running it. Just keep doing it. Do it until they stop it. And I think Joe Brady has done a good job of that. Now, for me, where you can find my work, obviously, NFL writer, college football writer, football writer. Where you will find football, you'll probably find me. I write Establish Fun every Wednesday, where football is fun. We established that. I got a cool 3-pack for you this week. Going to be talking about some really fun defenders and some really cool playoff races I think are coming down to the wire. You can find some of my podcast work. Sorry, no podcast today. We do a bunch of fun stuff about the NFL and college football week in, week out. We have podcast episodes come out Wednesday and Friday. But other than that, follow me, see where I'm going, see what I'm doing.
Yeah, and he's on Twitter at Acosta32_JP, and then also on Blue Sky at Acosta32JP. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm on Blue Sky. You know this as well. I don't like how we can't put underscores in our handles on Blue Sky.
I don't either. I don't either. I don't like it. I roll with it because I feel like 32 has kind of been my thing. I wore 32 in high school, and my favorite football player ever is Maurice Jones-Drew. So I gotta keep the 32. But the underscore is really throwing me off a little bit.
So I initially just wanted to be pro Ant when I made my Twitter handle, my first one, and I couldn't because it was taken. So I did pro with one underscore that was also taken. So that's why I did the 2 and ended with it. But now I like it and I've grown accustomed to it. So I did the Blue Sky thing and I was like, okay, cool. At pro understand it was like invalid, can't have characters, and I was like, what? I just like stared at it and I was like, okay, is pro Ant available? And it was, and I just like felt dejected And I even like look at it every once in a while. I'm like, this doesn't look right. Like, where's my underscore? And even I did a promo for just like a promo. I don't know what a tweet is called on Blue Sky. It's called a post. I think it's called a skeet.
I'm calling it a post.
Yeah, I call it a post too. I'm not going with skeet because that means something completely else. I grew up on Little John and Dave Chappelle, so that is now I'm not going there. And so like I put your name and I was like, oh, going live with JP, and I put the @ and I typed in the name out and then I clicked it, and you're just not seeing it with the underscore like annoyed me. And then everything that comes after like the .bksy, and I'm like, all this has to come through, but I can't get an underscore in my handle. Like, I'm glad you feel the same way. That makes me feel better.
It feels like the do you remember Fake Undertaker?
Yes.
Or like
yes.
with like Gilbert, where it's like you're almost there. You're almost there, but something is just not quite right.
So close. Yeah, or even like fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon at Survivor Series 96. Yeah. I was watching that back the other day. I watched Brett and Austin and then Sid versus Sean. And I totally forgot that fake Diesel and I can't believe they even did that. Like, I can't believe Vince cleared that. Like, what a horrible idea from that man.
I think the latest throwback pay-per-view that I watched was it was the 6-man Hell in a Cell that was the culmination of Who Ran Over Stone Cold.
Oh, nice.
And it was just the stupidest. Like, why is Rikishi falling off this cage, man?
Yep. He was in there just to take that bump, just to be like, well, we want to throw somebody off the cage into this truck. So who's it going to be? And they were like, Rikishi.
Get the big man down from there. What are you doing up there? That's like if Osiris Torrance like went through a table. Like, what are you doing up there, man?
Why are you on the cell? Osiris, come down. That's good. I like that. That's good. Well done. Oh man, this was awesome. As always, everybody who doesn't follow your work should. Again, you just knowing football, college and NFL, being able to talk it schematically, individually, player-wise, a multitude of teams, avenues, aspects, all that stuff. And then really good tweets and funny stuff in general about wrestling, the world, life, TV, movies, all that kind of stuff. JP, you're awesome. I appreciate the hell out of you. I will probably DM you, and not even probably, I will, and just sing your praises again. And thank you for just coming on and joining me. I appreciate you every single time. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night, and I'll see you when I see you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Later, man. One of the best, Mr. JP Acosta. Really enjoyed having him on the show tonight. And it was nice to have a guest that can talk and carry some conversation. As I, again, apologize at the beginning. I want to do so in the end here for just sounding not necessarily my normal self. I don't feel bad. I don't feel as bad as I sound, but I don't sound great. And I know that I don't sound too great. Wanted to bring up one last piece here and kind of see some thoughts from you folks in the chat, if you have some thoughts on this. So we brought up the rushing touchdown leaders from earlier in this episode. Talked about James Cook and where he was in that conversation on the graphic presented by our friends from BetUS. I wanted to bring up this one for the passing touchdown leaders of 2024. You have Joe Burrow with 30. You have Lamar Jackson at 29. Baker Mayfield still rocking there at 25. I am interested to see. I know there's some MVP odds that came out earlier today, I believe, or yesterday, and Josh Allen is at the tops in that conversation. Saquon Barkley has made his way into that conversation for some, and I think on this graphic that I'm referring to as well, he was there. But Lamar is still there. I know the Ravens have had a couple of losses, but if they kind of stem the tide a little bit, his numbers are good. I know Allen's are good. I'm very interested to see how this MVP race kind of shakes out potentially. Not necessarily for myself, because if Allen wins MVP, whoever wins MVP, I really traditionally don't care about it. But I know it means so much to Bills Mafia and so much to Bills fans. And we know how important touchdowns are to it and kind of those numbers and those wow moments. I think Allen has the moments beating Kansas City. I also think if Allen and the Bills can beat the Lions, I think that potentially solidifies and cements Allen as the MVP winner. But also just from a football perspective, lost in this, I know the Bengals are having a bad year. Joe Burrow's really been balling out a little bit. And it's not just the passing touchdowns. It's where he is with EPA. It's where he is with success rate. It is a season that I think is going to be like overshadowed by the fact that the Bengals have underachieved and are not performing well and up to their like regular snuff and standard that I think people have expected to see them perform up to this year. But Joe Burrow's having a quality year for the Bengals. Again, from a metric standpoint, from a raw stats standpoint, some of the throws that he's pulling off in tight windows, anticipation, the movement in the pocket, just playing it at a technicality level that I don't think is getting talked about enough because the Bengals are, 4-8 now after losing to Pittsburgh this past weekend in a wild shootout that I did not expect from Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. But yeah, just a pretty interesting season for Burrow, pretty interesting one for Lamar. Baker still riding up there in this graphic as well, despite not having Godwin for the majority of the year, Evans for a good chunk of it as well. All this guys kind of, falling down left and right for him from a weapon standpoint. But interested to see if Allen can creep up into this list a little bit. How much of the raw stats can he add in with the moments to continue to build that MVP case? We will see potentially going forward. And obviously, this graphic presented by our friends at BetUS, who, if you're looking for a new sports book this football season, BetUS is the answer. They give the fastest payouts in the industry, a 150% bonus on your first deposit, and then 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. They give you a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year. Live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business. They allow you to get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and they can also give you your very own personal account manager. Go over to BetUS for all of your betting needs as you do. I'm going to start to wind down here, throw up the banner that says Toodles, folks. I'm going to go drink some tea and some honey and soothe my voice. I hope you folks enjoyed this episode. If you have not already, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifebloods of this stream, of these streams, and they go a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire team at Cover One to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So if you have not already, please drop a like here on this video, here on YouTube. Turn on notifications for the Disguise Coverage playlist here on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cover One channel here on YouTube. We have it covered pretty much every single day of the week with varying levels of Bills content. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage on whatever podcasting app or platform you are listening on. Also, word of mouth is tremendously appreciated. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about the show, about how awesome it is, all of the fun things that come along with that. If you thought this episode was terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show. Also want to show some love. I'd like to throw it at different spots and various times. One Pie Pizza. We are in the middle of the Toys for Tots drive, as I continue to mention every single week here on this show. For every toy that you bring, One Pie Pizza will give you a ticket that allows you to be entered into their raffle for a multitude of prizes. I want to bring those up now and talk about them a little bit. There it is there. Drop an unwrapped gift into our Toys for Tots donation box and receive a chance to win one of many great prizes. This year's prizes include a signed Josh Allen custom jersey in first place. Second place prize is a signed James Cook custom jersey. Third place is one free pizza a month for an entire year. Fourth place is 4 free pizzas. Fifth place is 1 free pizza. I love that they do this every year, not just because of the prize opportunities, but as I continue to mention it, Christmas is my favorite time of the year. I know it's the same for a lot of other folks, or folks just really enjoy the holidays. Sometimes Christmas and sometimes the holidays aren't necessarily the best for a lot of folks, whether it's kids, families, adults, whatever have you. So any type of generosity you can show to, your community. Again, whether you live here in Buffalo, awesome. Stop in at One Pie Pizza, treat your taste buds to some delicious food, cup and jar pepperoni, homemade blue cheese, great sweet sauce pie with great cheese to sauce ratio, and also, drop some, toys off there for the community. But if you don't live in Buffalo, wherever you live, wherever you are, if you are able to give and, help out others in need this holiday season, I hope that you do so and try and brighten, someone's holiday, whether it's an adult, whether it's a kid, trying to make sure as many people and kids especially don't go toyless for Christmas and for the holidays. But again, if you live in Buffalo, donate wherever you can. But if you want to get an opportunity to win some prizes and get some great food while you're at it, stop by, One Pie Pizza and their Toys for Tots drive. I'm going to dip out, go rest the voice. I appreciate you folks for tuning in. Thank you very much for all the engagement, the comments, the back and forth. Exciting game this week. I'm very excited for it schematically. I'm going to be putting out more film from the Bills-Niners game in the coming days on Twitter and on Blue Sky. I will also be putting out some film of the Rams in the coming days as well, and just more stuff across the NFL in general as I continue to watch tape every single week and grind, scheme, and structure and X's and O's and all that stuff. Tune into the film room tomorrow with myself and Eric Turner as we break down a multitude of elements from Bills versus Niners. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I appreciate all you folks in whatever form or fashion your support comes in. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Go check out all of JP's work wherever you find it, on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on SB Nation with Establish the Fun. He's awesome. Major thank you to him. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your week. If I don't see you tomorrow, I will see you next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of Disguised Coverage. Until then, Godspeed. And as always, go Bills. And one last little special element, as we like to mention here on the show, I should say before I go by, goodbye there. Yeah, this episode again presented by our folks and friends over there at BetUS. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go to BetUS for all your betting needs. Toys for Tots, One Pie Pizza. Enjoy your Tuesday. Godspeed. Go Bills.